Star Wars only, I don't know what the fuck your problem is.
Rian Johnson, the writer and director of Star Wars Episode 8 The Last Jedi, has recently talked about in an interview on what he wished he would have done for The Last Jedi compared to his film Knives Out that came out, what was it, November 2019? Why does that feel so long ago? Wow, what a time. Anyways, he talks about it and he says, "It was the first time I was like, oh wow, this actually plays, this is good." And he was talking about the positive test screening that he had for Knives Out. He goes on to say, "It is really nice, and that's something on Star Wars. You can't test Star Wars movies for a lot of reasons. I've always hated test screenings, and when we were making Star Wars, at a certain point in the process, you're like, God, I would give my left arm to put this in front of 300 people in Burbank and just see how it plays." And I gotta give the man credit. That is something I think his film could have benefited from. I get with Knives Out, the test screenings were kind of not a big deal because it's not a big franchise like Star Wars where you really care about the spoilers. I mean, sure, there's a spoiler on who is the actual killer, but yeah, test screening, I have it, a lot of people are gonna leave that and go, I'm just gonna spoil it on Twitter. What the test screenings do for a writer and director like Rian Johnson is let them see how the audience reacts to certain scenes, certain story elements. I'm not entirely sure how accurate this is, but I think they did test screenings for Endgame, which makes no sense to me at all. But apparently in the test screening they did, there was a version where Tony snaps and he sees his daughter before he dies, his grown-up daughter who says it's okay that he did this or whatever, it's okay if he dies, blah, blah, blah. And basically, the audience was confused at the test screening, so they took it out for the actual final cut of the film, and the one you got in theaters did not have that sequence. So there's situations like that you can do. I know for a while there's a rumor that J.J. Abrams had not J.J., but basically Lucasfilm had test screenings for The Rise of Skywalker. I mean, what the fuck, guys? There's not been a test screening for a single Star Wars movie ever. And that's why I think Rian Johnson talks about this, where he says, I wish I could see the audience reaction to it, because the first test screening and the only test screening they've ever done for Star Wars was in 1976 at George Lucas's house when he was making the original Star Wars film. He showed his friends, he showed the executives at 20th Century Fox, like Alan Ladd Jr., Francis Ford Coppola came over, Steven Spielberg came over, and they all watched his cut of Star Wars. Not Star Wars A New Hope, it was just Star Wars at the time. And it was awful. It was just absolutely awful. And everyone shat on George so much. And the guy had to fix everything and worked on the characters, worked on the editing. And then what do you know? We got the greatest franchise of all time. So you need test screenings in those kind of situations to help the director and help the writer understand where the audience is getting confused, especially if you have the movie brats right by you, like George Lucas did, some of the greatest directors and storytellers of our time. These people can help you enhance the story and perfect it. With Rian Johnson, I mean, I don't know how well a Burbank test screening of 300 people would do in his film The Last Jedi, because I'll be honest, I mean, I remember watching the film the first time for myself, and a lot of people, and I was there like the fan of it, like major Star Wars fans. And the theater was kind of quiet when it kind of went over. We were like, that was interesting, that was a film. I really do think he probably would have changed some things if he had some test screenings for it, but unfortunately they don't do test screenings for Star Wars, and with good reason. I mean, I'm not trying to harp on them for not doing it, I just think the reason they don't do it, and I know the reason they don't do it, is they don't want to spoil the film for everybody. They don't want to have the 300 people from Burbank watch the film and go, that was really cool, let me tell everyone on Twitter that Luke sucked on some green tit or whatever. And then everyone at home is going to be like, oh, no, I don't think I really want to watch this now. It sounds weird. It sounds stupid. What do you mean Luke's crazy? Star Wars is a franchise built on major reveals, major plot points like Rey is a Palpatine, or, God, what else was there in the sequel trilogy? Was there any other big reveals? I don't think there was. But you get the point. You want to keep all that stuff on the low, and a certain group of people know about it, mainly people involved with production. And so test screenings just would reveal too much about the film, too much about the plot, and would spoil too much that it would actually ruin the hype of going to see the film for the first time if you have test screenings. I do think they should have done one for The Last Jedi, just for the sake of someone looking at Rian Johnson from the crowd, and he gets up on stage, "Hey guys, so what'd you think? Did you like Star Wars Episode 8 The Last Jedi?" and expects to get like a big cheer from the audience. You just got that one guy in the back row. Yeah, what the fuck was that? Oh, that'd make my day. I'd love to be that guy too. But still, I get why they don't do test screenings. They don't want to spoil everything for us Star Wars fans, and I can respect that and appreciate that. Like I said, there hasn't been a test screening since 1976 for Star Wars, at least to my knowledge. And maybe the original trilogy had one or two, but no, I don't think they did, because Empire Strikes Back was under wraps. pretty tightly by Irvin Kershner and Lucas himself. So yeah, just one of those situations where, in hindsight, I think a test screening might have done well for The Last Jedi to change the film a little bit so audiences could react to it better, because it was a very divisive film. But also, maybe we'd be in a different scenario with Star Wars if that happened. Maybe we would have seen it, people would have revealed it like people do and spoil everything, and then people wouldn't have been so against The Last Jedi because they would have had time to prepare for the weirdness of it, or maybe they would have been more against it. I don't know. I don't know how test screenings would have changed that, but God knows someone had to tell Rian Johnson what he was doing was weird, because it sure as hell wasn't the production team. Would have been nice to be an audience member and be like, hey, you fucked it up! But I digress. Tell me your thoughts below. Do you think The Last Jedi would have benefited from a test screening? Do you like Knives Out? That's another film that Rian Johnson made that did well in the test screenings and did extremely well with audiences. So it's a very well-made film. It's a very solid film. Tell me your thoughts below. I'm Star Wars Only. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. See y'all next time, and may the Force be with you. Always.